Welcome to episode 2. In this one, we will actually get into the electrical design of this 3-bedroom house. This episode builds upon episode 1. If you haven't seen episode 1, which is the project setup, then I suggest you take a look at that first to set this up and get the architectural and mechanical links into your model and levels and grids all set up. So if you're ready to proceed to electrical, let's get right into it. Now we're at the point where we can actually get into some electrical design and drafting. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring in some receptacle families and put them into this model. Like I mentioned, families are the building blocks, and they're arranged by category. So if you expand this families heading and scroll down to electrical fixtures. Now let me just show you electrical equipment is pretty much, think of distribution equipment like transformers, panel boards, panels, transformers, more transformers. These are equipment, and then the actual devices, you might call it, are called fixtures in Revit. So we have duplex receptacles, a high voltage receptacle, which will be our 240 volt receptacle for like a range. And then we have some junction boxes that we'll use for connecting mechanical equipment. But for now, we're going to start with duplex receptacles. And again, all of these are loaded into this residential electrical template. So expand duplex receptacle, and there's a few options. These sub options under here are called types. Under one family, the duplex receptacle, you can have multiple types of that family, which has different characteristics, and I'll show you how those work. But right now, we don't need the GFCI. We're going to put a standard receptacle. You can just grab this and drag it in, hold your button down, drag it in, let go, and we want to install this in this family. Now, I'm getting the do not enter sign, the circle with a slash. Well, what's happening here is this family has to be attached to a wall. As I get close to a wall, you see it there, the receptacle symbol pops up. And if I get away from the wall, it's gone. I get close to the wall, it wants to attach to that wall. Now, if I keep moving it around, it's looking for different things to attach to. This kind of behavior is called a hosted family or a face-based family. It's looking for the face of a wall in this case. Now, up top, place on vertical face is the default. Now, we can place it on some other face, like a horizontal or slanted face. If you click on that, you can see that now I've got some kind of a thick box in there. Well, it's trying to put a receptacle on maybe the floor or the ceiling, some kind of horizontal. And as you drag it around, you can see now it's trying to put it on the sink. So it is trying to attach itself to something. We want to place a vertical face. And this is how most electrical families are out of the box. They are trying to attach to a face. They're hosted to the face of this model. So we will get close and let it attach. Now, if you've done any electrical design for residential projects, you know that there's a lot of code rules, NEC rules and local rules and codes that affect where receptacles are placed, how far apart they can be, what height they can be, all that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to get into the details of all of that in this video. That's a whole nother subject. I'll touch upon it because that's something you'll need to know. But I'll also give you some links in the description below for some good YouTube channels, especially that have great code reviews and code lessons for that. But the basics are any piece of wall that's 2 feet or larger has to have a receptacle. So in this case, I've got the doorway from the door to the closet looks like it's wide enough to need a receptacle. So I'll put one there. Now, again, as you move this around, it's trying to find different surfaces. Sometimes you'll have trouble getting the right surface. You may need to hit the tab button. Now, the tab button is special in Revit because since we're in 3D, we can have different things stacked on top of each other vertically. The tab will cycle through those things that are stacked. For example, down here, we have a back of the toilet line is right on top of the wall line. So if I hit tab, it will find those different, see, I'm just hitting tab and it's bouncing around. It's finding different surfaces, different faces that are stacked on top of each other. Tab cycles through those. You'll get used to using that tab button. But in this case, this is popping right to the wall. So now I just click it, and there it is. Now the question mark shows up because it can have a label associated with it, which I may or may not need. But I escape out of there. There we go. Now this template is set up to show this symbol as a nice thick line. That is controlled in settings, which we'll get to in the future. But this template is set up for that visibility. Now I can click on this and I can move it around. I can't move it away from the wall because it's attached, it's hosted, but I can move it horizontally. Now, why can I move it here? Well, that wall actually extends in front of this closet up high, and so it follows that line. So you just got to be careful where you put this. Same thing with this. The door interrupts it, but there's still a wall there above that door. You can see this is a symbol, a two-dimensional symbol. If I click on it, there is data within this symbol. And that's one of the pieces that makes Revit so powerful for us in electrical, is that we have electrical data inside this symbol that we can use to connect to each other and make an actual logical electrical system. Let's take a look at what's here. This first box here shows you what this family is. And specifically, this instance or this one receptacle at this location has this data. If I were to put another one over on this wall, it may have different information in this box. So let's take a look at that information. First of all, you get the family name, Duplex Receptacle, and the type is called standard. We saw that there was a GFCI type as well. But this one receptacle now, it's related to level 1. So this elevation from that level is 1'6". Now, is that to the top, bottom, center? It depends on how the family was constructed. In this case, I just know from experience that it's to the center. It's telling you it's hosted to a linked Revit model, offset from the host, which would be the wall. If we want to have this receptacle a foot off the wall, we could do that. We don't want that in this case. Now, electrical loads, panel and circuit number. We do not have it connected yet to a panel, so that this is empty. We don't worry about this data here. Now, phasing is project phasing, not electrical phasing, but project phasing. We can say that the phase that this receptacle is created in is new construction. This whole building is new, so everything's new construction, and we're not demolishing it. But if you had a remodel, you could use these things to dictate whether this is an existing receptacle or a new receptacle. Does it stay? Does it get demolished? That can all be determined here in the phasing. And then these other things we don't worry about. Down at the bottom, it tells us the electrical data. It's 120 volt, single pole, 180 VA. And it's grayed out. I can't get to that. Well, how would I change that? There's also other parameters or variables associated with this receptacle. This is the instance one, so this is this one only. But if I click on this thing called Edit Type, now I'm getting into the type properties versus instance. So type controls every standard duplex receptacle in this project will have this information. So if I am going to change the voltage of this receptacle, every single standard duplex receptacle in my project will change to that voltage. The load classification. If you're doing something like a commercial project where you're adding up loads and applying 125% to continuous loads, maybe you're applying the first 10,000 VA plus half of the rest to receptacles. Commercial loads have different demand factors. Now, we're residential, so we're going to be doing a totally different kind of load calculation based on the NEC rules. This is critical in this residential project, but because Revit was primarily made for commercial. Again, the load, if we were doing commercial load summary, the load would be 180 VA per receptacle. We're going to calculate it differently. So these don't matter as much residentially, but just let you know it's all there. And a lot of this stuff too is just, if you want more information about this type of standard receptacle, you can put things in like that. And we'll get into some of these as we get into lighting. But that's the basics of the type parameters. So if I jump over to look at a GFCI, what makes it different? Well, the default elevation starts out at 4 feet. That makes it different. I guess this was set up for maybe an above counter type of GFCI. It ends up looking different symbol-wise too. See, it adds a label, GFCI, to this as well. So that's a type parameter. If I change the type to the GFCI, it changes how it looks, and it would change every single receptacle that's the GFCI to look like this. Let's go back to standard. Now I need to place another one. Now there's another way we can place receptacles. If we go up to the Systems tab, you'll see it arranged by HVAC, and it pretty much means the MEP tab. We've got mechanical, plumbing, and over here we get electrical. Sometimes you'll see electrical on the left. These can all be actually moved around. So we can move it over here if we want. But I'll leave it here for now. We can put in cable tray and conduit, parallel conduits, electrical equipment like panels and such. We're doing devices. So if I do the drop-down device, I can get to my electrical fixtures devices like receptacles, and we can get into communication and data, fire alarm, lighting, all these other electrical trades as well from here. We're doing electrical fixtures. Click on that. Now it lets me choose here what do I want to put in. So then I can go down to my standard receptacle and do that. Personally, I like to drag things from the project browser. I treat it like kind of a tool palette. So that's my preferred method. Another great method is if you already have one in and you just want to make a copy of it, copy behaves differently. If I just click on it and go up to my Modify tab and find Copy, it'll let me copy it from some point. Let's say from here. Well, Copy, though, won't let me put it onto another wall. See how it's copied? It's only going horizontally. I can only copy things to the same host, which is this wall. So copy has limited use sometimes in Revit. What's more useful is to right-click and go up here. There's a bunch of context commands, but go to Create Similar. That is like inserting another instance of this same family type, but it will let me put it anywhere I want. So I use Create Similar a lot. So here we go. Now, another code rule you'll run into on residential is from an end wall, I can't be further than 6 feet away from an end wall. Well, we're 6 feet. What I like to do is go to the Annotate tool, Detail Line. Now you have different kinds of lines you can draw. You can use a line tool, a rectangle tool, circle tool. You can draw whatever shape you want. I'm going to stick with line for now. And I can pick my line style. I did red before, but what I'm going to use is just something like a medium line. Now this from here to here is probably like a foot. So I'm just going to draw it from here. And I'm going to go maybe up 5 feet max. See how I've got a dimension line there? So maybe 5 foot is as far as I want to go because this is a foot. That will let me put this receptacle not more than 6 feet away. So I use lines like that to space my receptacles. Now the next rule is I can't be more than 12 feet apart along the wall. So let us figure out what is 12 feet from this receptacle with our drawing lines again. So again, I'm just using these medium lines. Let's go along the wall, and we have 6'1" to there. So we can pretty much go another 6 feet. I like to keep it just a little bit short. And let's put that here. So right click, Create Similar. And as we get close to that wall, it will snap into place. Something like that. Now, one thing we want to worry about when we lay out devices is the vertical height and how that relates to the architecture. Are these windows clear to the floor? How far from the floor are they? Can we get an 18-inch receptacle? Let's say we want to put this here instead of between them. Well, there's a few tools we can use to take a look at the architecture even within our model. We saw the 3D view default that shows the exterior of the building. Well, there's a ways we can look at the interior of the building. One thing we can do is drop a section, create a section through this building. Now up top in the quick access toolbar, there's this little thing, the circle is a section. You click on that, and then we can draw a section symbol, pick the start point. Let's start out here somewhere. Drag it to the right, and I want to keep it parallel to my back wall, and I can go all the way through the building if I want, or I can just go through one room. Let's go all the way through the building for now. Click a point. Now, when you click it, you can see that there's a dashed boundary for this section. This controls how far left and right, east and west, our section will look. And then this says how far north, or I call it into the model, if we're standing at a section looking like an elevation at this wall, how far in do we want to see? So It doesn't matter so much here with the exterior wall, but I'll go just outside the exterior wall, escape out of that. Now, if I double click, not on the line, but on the head, then it will open up a section view, section 1. It also creates a section 1 view over here in my project browser. Now, you may not see it right away. It might have gotten buried somewhere. And what I see is some question marks with a plus and section, building section. So it created its own place in the project browser for a section. And there it is, section 1. If I'm going to save this section and want to call it something, I can actually hit F2 or click on it to rename it. And maybe I'll call this something like section, and I like to use capitals, section, back of house, something like that. And we can rename this. But there, a section. Now this section has this box around it. If I click on that box, I'll see some grips. These squiggly grips will break the section in pieces. If I want to eliminate the center of this and have 2 separate sections, see how that works? Undo. You have an undo button up here. Or I can grab this circle grip and drag the section down. I don't need to see this high, so I'm going to pull this down to the roof line maybe and stop. Now you'll notice that these grids moved along with this section. And that's one reason that we brought these grids into our model, so that they follow along with our section. So the annotations will follow along with our section. We also don't need to go that deep, but this can be adjusted. We can even adjust left and right from here, just like we could. See how that moved? It moves in both of these views. But let's take a look at our bedroom. Now, what we see is that our receptacle is mounted up on the wall. That's our 3-dimensional symbol. It's a cover plate that we see on the wall, and it's below these windows. So we are okay to mount this under the windows. We're also seeing some blue stuff here. What's this? This ends up being part of the, click on it, part of the mechanical model Revit link. And these look like some ductwork and maybe some diffusers, some floor grills. And so that can be used for coordination with our electrical model if we have some interference or clashes. But our basic reason for this is to see that wall. Now, what else can we do? Another thing we can do is to create another 3D view using a camera. So we'll go up to the quick access toolbar. This little house is the default 3D view. Now, we already have one of those, but if we do the drop down, we can get to a camera view and create our own perspective type of camera view. So click on camera. Now we can place the camera anywhere we want. I'm going to place it as if you walk into the room through this door and you want to look at this northwest corner. I'm going to drop it kind of in this corner. Oh, I don't want the door. I'll put it right here. And then my second click will aim the camera, and I'm going to aim it beyond the walls and click there. So that gives me a view of that room. We can see our electrical cover plate right there. Now we can change this view like we did before. We maybe want to change the discipline to coordination so that it looks differently. Now, when we change its discipline, it also moves it around on our project browser. So our 3D view now is under coordination right there. And we can give this a name. I like to name views, specifically the 3D views. If I create another 3D view, it will write over the old one. So I want to make sure I have a name on here. So I like to leave it something like 3D, I'll say bedroom. And I don't remember the name of this bedroom. I'll put northwest. What if I want to change this view? It's easiest to change it from here. So if you hit F8, or let me click on the view, hit F8, you will get this view control. We can zoom in, we can orbit, we can pan left and right, we can rewind if we were creating a walkthrough. But I like to look at one. There's one here called look. If I click and hold look, now as I move my cursor, my mouse cursor up and down, I'm looking left and right. So I can aim it so I look down. Now you won't see everything until you unclick. I see the grill for the HVAC system. I see, and I'm escaping out of this, and I see my cover plate. Now out of the box, Revit cover plates just look like a rectangle. There's no symbol, there's no, receptacle holes on the face, no screws, nothing fancy. And we can always add that, but that's a family editing procedure, which is an advanced topic. We're not going to get into any family editing in this lesson. So this is very basic. But that gives you at least a 3D representation of what that looks like. Now, F8, we can also go to up, down right here. Hold it down. Now I can go change my eye level of my camera up and down. So another thing I can do is I can hit this walk. Now I have to warn you that it's very sensitive. If you hold down walk and you barely move your cursor forward, it walks pretty fast. See that walk? I'm barely moving. If you go too far, you will walk very fast. I can spin around. There's my closet door. I can do a little bit of a backup, but you have to be very gentle with the walk command. But as you can see, it's a handy tool for walking around this house. Now I'm going to go through this door, which is closed. It'll let me go through walls. Let me walk out here and see what we get. There's my hallway. Let me turn. If I memorize my floor plan, I should be able to get around this door. And I went too fast. You can see what happens. It's a little hard to navigate this way, but this lets me look around. Now, I'm only seeing a certain distance because my camera, where I stopped my camera, is my depth of view. But I can actually change the far clip offset. That depth of view is 27 feet. Let's go 100. 100 feet. 100 feet. Now I can see further. Now I'm outside, and there's my driveway. So let me do the look. Look up, look back. Now we're outside our house, looking at the front. We can walk into the garage. Again, be careful. And you can just tour the building this way, and it really helps you to get an idea of the architecture of this building. So pop into the garage. Now look at that. Now we see that we have a furnace, it looks like, and we have a water heater. Now, these are up off the floor. They haven't drawn in the rack or stand that they're sitting on. But anyway, again, this gives you an idea of what's going on in the building. So I'm going to take this back to where I was in the back corner, just so that it matches the name I gave to this view. So let me just kind of get it back there. Trying to walk my way in. There we go. Walk my way into that room. So that's the other way. There's yet another thing you can do to see this in 3D. Now, this one you have to have at least something electrical in here that you can grab to create a view. So let me just actually window around all these devices. Up here under view, there's a little teeny box. It's next to this X. Selection box. Now, it says selection box, but it ends up being what's called a section box. Click on that. There. It did some kind of a 3D view, but if I use my mouse wheel to zoom in, I can only see bits and pieces of my architecture. What it did is it created a little box around the pieces that I picked. I only picked these receptacles, and so it's limited. But I can take that box and expand it. Well, I need to be able to see this box. In this view and in my project template, I don't have the box turned on. So here's some practice on how to turn things on and off. Go back up to your visibility. And we want to turn on, in our model, a thing called a section box. Now, let's look in the model category. Click here, hit S to get out of the S's. Is there a section box? No. Let's try annotation. Click somewhere, hit S. There, section box. It's off. That's why we can't see this box I'm talking about. Say OK. Now we have the outline of a blue box. There's a lot of boxes here, and I told you I'll tell you about these green ones in a minute. But you click on this blue one, that's called a section box. Click on it. Now we have some grips. This is kind of a left-right grip, an up and down, and an up and down, and a left-right. This is the top of the box grip, and this is the bottom of the box grip. So we can move it, and we can move it to the right. And what it's doing is it's establishing boundaries of a cut, of a section. They call it a section box for that reason. We can drag the top up, and let's say we want the top to be just below a ceiling. We see the closet doors. You go further, and you'll see the closet. Now I'm into the restroom. We can drag this around and see pieces of our house. Now we can just make this completely, take the whole house if we want. Now we're seeing some of the furniture and some of the cabinetry. So this is another nice way we can look at the interior of the building. And we can change its look. We can go back to hidden line so that it's more of a black and white. We can even go wireframe. But the shaded or consistent colors is kind of a nice way to look at it. Again, this is a basic architectural model. The walls are just gray. But again, we can use our navigation box up here to spin things around. We can hold shift. We can pivot like we did before. We can zoom in. So this is a great tool for taking a look at what's in our model. And maybe I want to pull this up a little bit. I went above the ceiling. So stay just below the ceiling. The ceiling looks like it must be higher in that room. So there we go. So we have a few nice ways to look at it. Now, here's that 3D view I was telling you about. We need to rename this. I'll call this 3D section box. So now we have a number of 3D tools we can look at. Back to our power plan. So we're good there. We want to finish this around, and let's just do a quick check to make sure we're not going to be further than 6 feet from this wall. So I'm going to go to about 5'8", right click, create similar, and get rid of that. Now I need to make sure that I'm not further than 12 feet around here. I may need to add yet another receptacle. I'm almost 6 feet, 6'4", so we're right at the brink. And we're only 5'4", so we make it. We made it. Looks like we are good there. Now, we just go through the rest of the house and add receptacles like that. If you look in the code, you'll see that if your hall's greater than something like 10 feet, we need a receptacle. I think it's a good idea anyway, whether it's required by code or not. So we can put a receptacle, say, in the middle of that wall. Down to this bedroom, our closet's in a different location. We have different rules. So we want to go through this and make sure we're not further than 6 feet from the door opening. Let's go to about 5'10". Again, create similar. These are all coming in at 1'6" height. You can tell over here. We could change that right here if we need to. It's an instance parameter. Again, what we see here are parameters, variables that control just this one receptacle, this one instance that I'm putting in. It doesn't affect all of them. The only thing that affects all of them is if I jump into this edit type. Now this affects all of the standard types of duplex receptacles. So I will just go through the rest of these bedrooms and get these put in, and I will zip this through so you don't have to watch the slow process. Okay, that's that bedroom. Now let's go back to the master bedroom and do the same thing. I'm going to create similar, get that in there, and then start my dimensions. 4 feet. Now let's check this last one. We may be too far. And we're more than 6 feet away. So we're going to have to put another one right here. Makes sense. This is a pretty big room. It needs 5. Now let's see what else we have for rooms. Let's go into this hallway. I want to do the same thing in this hallway. Let's get a receptacle into this hallway somewhere like that. Now the laundry room. This is a special room that has special code requirements for the laundry. It's going to require us to provide a laundry receptacle, laundry circuit that would typically power the washing machine. The dryer is its own connection. So we will need a connection for the washer, but I also like to, in this case, put a receptacle in for, this looks like a counter, a cabinet. So let's take a look at this room and see what it looks like. So I'm going to do the section box here again. Let me put a receptacle in here, right there. Now, this receptacle, I may want higher. I want above if this is a cabinet. Let me just click this and do that section box, and we'll see what we have here. Again, it just does a tiny little box that we need to show. Now, we've already turned the section box on for our 3D view, so it sticks that way now. But we do need to spread this out to see what's in here. All right, so I'm seeing a lot of different things. I see my ductwork up here. Let's click this and I'm going to look from this other corner, and I want to get below the ceiling. There we go. I'm starting to see my laundry room. I can pull this in. There we go. And let's get over here and look at that angle. So, and this must be the floor. There we go. So we have our machines, and then we have a counter. So I want to make sure I get that receptacle above that counter. Right now it's under here. I can't see it. So let's go back to the floor plan. How can I raise that up? If I click on it, the actual elevation from the level is what I want to change. Not the offset from the wall, but the I want to put this up at, let's say 3'6". Now you can put 3 in a foot mark and put 6 in inches if you want. You can also just do a shortcut. 3 space 6 is understood as 3'6". And now let's go back to that 3D view. There it is. It got popped up. And maybe I wanted it at 4 feet, but we'll keep it there for now. And now, because this is an instance parameter, only that one receptacle got put in at 3'6". And let me go ahead and rename this. I'm going to call this 3D laundry room. These pieces of equipment, how will I know what they are? Now, they may be labeled on the actual architectural plans. If I had PDFs of the architectural plans, I could see that, but here you can't see any labels. What you can do now, as long as we have this set to select pinned elements, because this is part of the pinned background, if you remember. If I hover over something and hit tab, eventually, there it lit up. It will light things up. So if I hover over something and I hit tab, it lights up. Now I can click on it and I will see the information of that family, even though it's in the linked architectural model. So this says washer front load. If I click on that one, I get dryer front load. So we have washer on the left, dryer on the right. So that's one way you can figure out what things are. So this is the washing machine. Now, it just needs a 120 volt connection. Now, if I right click, select, create similar, this is going to use the same elevation of this one. I can change it back once I put it in here, or I could just make sure I create similar from one that's already at the height that I want. So I can do that. Let's put that there. So that's our receptacle for the washer. Now for the dryer, that will depend on whether you have a gas dryer or an electric dryer. We're going to assume that in this case, we don't have gas available, which is frankly happening in a number of areas here in the US. So we're going to go with all electric. Let us hook up a dryer connection. Now dryers, if you're familiar with those, are typically a 240 volt connection, so line to line. So we need a special receptacle that can do that. Let's take a look at this receptacle. We can't change voltage or anything here, but let's take a look at the type. What can we change about this? We could change its voltage, but we can't change the number of poles to make it line to line, which would be 2 pole. So we can't make this receptacle be a 240 volt 2 pole receptacle. We need a different receptacle. Well, that's why we have in our project template already another kind of receptacle. This one's called a high voltage receptacle over here. Let's bring that in. Standard, drag it in, and we're going to put it on that. Well, it's also wall hosted, as you can see. It wants to connect to a wall, so let's put that right, and it's finding something else to connect to. Sometimes you'll find that what's it snapping to? Who knows? Click there. And it's also mounted at 1'6", but it has a different symbol. Is that the symbol you want? It may or may not be. If you're using out-of-the-box Revit symbols, you're stuck with what they give you, unless you get into family editing, again, which is more advanced. So we're going to live with the symbols we get for now. I have many videos on my channel that show you how to actually customize these families and symbols and all of that, which you can take a look at. It's a more advanced subject we're not going to handle here. So we're going to live with that symbol. But we also want to make sure it has what we need as far as electrical characteristics. Because even though we're not going to use the load of this, we're going to do it with a different method, we still need the voltage right so we can connect it to our panel and have a correct panel schedule. So let's see what we have for types. High voltage type. Looks like this one is already set up for 240. Now that's the nominal voltage in the US for a house. Sometimes you'll hear it called 220. 230, 240. The code defines this as a 240 volt receptacle. So we're going to go with that voltage. It is 2 poles because it is line to line, not line to neutral. Load classification isn't as critical right now for residents, and the load is not critical for, we're going to be figuring out the loads a different way than commercial does. But 240 volt 2 pole is what is important. So we're good there. Now, when you have a special type of receptacle, I typically like to put a label on it because an electrician looking at this won't be able to know that this is the dryer and this is the washer. So I'm going to label this. Now I can just type in some text. Now the way you type in text, up here you can see the big A, which is a text tool. It's also up here in the quick access. I can just click on text, and then over on the right, I can do a drop down to figure out what size. A 1/4 inch high text. This is in like a paper space view, a sheet space, actual dimensions, or a smaller 3/32. Well, so I can pick 3/32. Arial is the font, and I can just type in something like dryer. I can either close this or I can click out here somewhere and then escape out of it. And now I have a piece of text that I can move around. This text happens to have an opaque background, not transparent, so it covers up what I cover. I can move this around with the little move sign. And I can just put that here. I can also click on this, and up top, you can see I can add a leader. Left leader straight, a right side leader straight. I can add a left side arc leader, right side arc. And then I can even pick if the leader starts at the top left, at the middle left, bottom left, right, and all that. I can even set up how I want this justified, center, left, right. So there's a lot of things I can do with text. Let's say I want to put a leader out the left. Adds a leader, and it gives me some control points. Here's the end, the point of it, if I point to that receptacle. And let me say this dryer's up here, and I want to put what I call a shoulder. I can do that so that it's straight down. So you can get the appearance that you want. Out of the box, and in this template, we just have the open arrow symbol. You can actually change that. If you click on the text, you have some instance parameters just for this one piece of text, or I can change the entire type of text. The type is called 3/32 Arial in the family text. I can make the leader arrowhead different. This is just a 30-degree, it ends up being open. I can make all of my 3/32 Arial have a filled arrow, 15-degree. Okay. There, let's see, I like that better. Now, any text that's 3/32 Arial will have that kind of an arrow. So we can add labels to things, and this is just what I call dumb text. And in this situation, maybe that's fine. For when we get to mechanical equipment, HVAC equipment, we may want something smarter than a dumb text. We will get to that when we get to the mechanical equipment, and I'll show you how we can do a smart text, which is called a tag. Kind of like the room tags, but we'll be able to tag our equipment. And we can do the same thing for this washer. We can actually just click on this and copy it up here with copy. If we do create similar, it puts us into the text command. But if we actually copy this one, because it's not hosted to anything, this works. I can click anywhere and then just say I want to copy it down here. Now I can move this where I want. I can move the arrow where I want. And I can change this instance of text to washer. So at least we have things labeled now. Now I can go to some other rooms and finish my receptacle layout. Now in the pantry, this is just a storage room. I'm not going to need any receptacles in here, so we'll leave that out. Now we have great room, dining room, kitchen. Now the kitchen's going to get busy, as we know, electrically. But the great room and dining room will treat like any other room. And it's hard to see because of this grid line, but there's actually a closet door, entry closet here. This is looks like the front porch. So is this piece of wall wider than 2 feet? We can double check with our measurement system and see 3 foot. Yeah, it's almost 4 feet wide. So we need a receptacle. So let's go ahead and create similar from here. Now again, are these windows too high? And now see, as you get here, it wants to jump around. So what you can do is place this on a good piece of wall here escape out, and then you can drag this around along this wall. It'll even go to the other side of the door if I want. So I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to stay just a little shy of that window. If someone sets a little table with a lamp, they have a way to do this without stretching across. Now this piece between the doorway, the opening, and this closet door is less than 2 feet, so I don't need a receptacle there. But now I continue on from this spot, and I'll need something within 6 feet. So again, I will go through and start measuring. That's 1'3", and another 3 feet. So we've got 4'3", 4'4", and let's go another couple feet here. So we'll get a receptacle. And again, just like we did elsewhere, we will go through and get all these receptacles put in this dining and great room. So now the next one has to be not more than 12 feet away. So let me just draw my line and go about 11.6, 11.7, and let's go ahead and create one similar right there and continue around the room. Go up about 9 feet, create similar. And we'll do the same here. Now I could just copy this from here to less than 12 feet there. Now, what happens here is it put it down at 0. So the copy is not always a reliable way to duplicate something. It's messing with its height. So let's get rid of that. And we're going to do our create similar again after we figure out how far away to put it. I'm going to say just short of 12. Best to actually do create similar so that it, especially with these hosted elements, so that they get hosted to the right piece. And yes, that's still at 1'6". And let's continue around. We are 9.7, so I can go about 2 feet away. Get one in here. Now what's interesting is you can actually mount receptacles to grid lines. That is strange, but just keep that in mind if that's happening. See how it's flipping around too? It's trying to host at the center of the wall, so you really have to watch these hosting. Now, how are we doing? This is the end of this cabinet, and we have to be within 6 feet of that. So let's see how far we are. Just too far, so I'm going to go ahead and add another one. Now, we could probably play around with some spacings and maybe get it just to work, but, you know, I'll just add one in this case. So that takes care of that part of the great room. We also have this part of the great room, which we need to deal with. And this doesn't look like it's longer than 12 feet, so we can get a receptacle in the middle of this wall. It's not really a hallway, it's part of the great room, so I'll put a receptacle there. Now we can take a look at the kitchen. This is going to be a little busier. So let us see what we have in this kitchen. I'm going to do some sections. So let's draw a section. And just in case you're wondering, this seems like it's getting cluttered with sections. When we go to put this on a sheet and print it and all that like a PDF, if the section symbol doesn't have a sheet in it, like if we don't actually put the section view on a sheet, this symbol won't print. And I will show you how that works when we get to the end of this project and start making sheets to print and print sheets to PDF. So we can put sections wherever we want, and it's not going to clutter up our final drawing. So let's go ahead and add a section here looking, and I'm going to go through the wall. And let's see how far we're looking. Again, I don't want to look further than just the wall surface itself. Double click that, and it's high. We can pull this down. So we're looking at that east wall, and we can see we have cabinets with a backsplash, and we have more upper cabinets. So we need to get some receptacles above this counter space. This would be considered part of the kitchen counters. And according to the NEC rules, we have to have receptacles at certain distances, even above counters, no more than 2 feet from the end and no more than 4 feet between them. It's a little tighter spacing, than the floor receptacles. Again, review these NEC rules that I've linked below, and you can pin that down, but we're going to go with that. And I want these counter height. Now remember, we put one down here at counter height, so I can just use that one, create similar, and put it here. So now we have a couple of things that it's trying to hook to. We have a wall surface, the fat line, and then this ends up being the backsplash. So you can see if I connect it to the wall, will I even see that? And I'm going to get rid of all these and reopen my new section. We can actually see that, and that's a little too low for the backsplash. So let me click on this and raise it up. I'm going to put it up at 4 feet. Now you may think you want a horizontal one in a backsplash. You could, but that would actually be a different family, a horizontal family. It'd have to be created that way. So that's a custom family, unless we can find one somewhere that we can bring in. But typically that ends up being some kind of a custom family that we have to get into. So we're not going to deal with that. So back here, let's take a look at how far away we are. So let's go to our annotate. And from the inside, well, from the outside, the wall's underneath. So from the edge of this counter, I want to be within 2 feet. So there's 2 feet mark. I'm going to pull this a little bit here. Now, you may worry about back-to-back boxes. Well, this one's down low, this one's high, so it may not be an issue. And frankly, these are what I call diagrammatic, so they're not exact dimensions, and an electrician is going to take this and actually mount a box typically to a vertical stud that may be anywhere along here. So these aren't super critical. These are approximate dimensions anyway. So let's see how far we are. Let's see how far we are from here. Now we want to go 6 feet. So we're 6 feet 1 inch. So we are just barely going to make it 4 feet between them. Now, another way you can just move this a little bit is click on it and then use your arrow key down to slightly nudge it. If you hit shift arrow key, it's a bigger nudge. See that? That's pretty common with Windows type of things. So I'm going to nudge it just a hair, and then I'm going to put another one down here. And we know that these are 2 feet in and 4 feet between them, and it just fits. Now this one also is up at 4 feet. Good. So we're good there. There's our section just to make sure things look good. Now we're going to move across the doorway over to here, to the south wall of the kitchen. Let's take a look at that. I also want to do another section. Now this is facing up this way. Well, I don't need to redraw it. I can just click on it, and there's a little arrows right here that I can use to swap this up and down. You can also rotate it if you need to. But let's do that and double click that. Now I'm looking at, I can pull this down. Now I'm looking at the south wall, and I can even see some HVAC in here. The south wall, and it looks like we can tell by the symbology, by what it looks like, we don't have labels on this stuff. This looks like a range, cabinetry. This looks like a microwave, and it probably has a vent built into it to ventilate this space. So we need to make sure we get receptacles in for those. And then we have what looks like a refrigerator over here. Now our section goes deep into this room, so we were seeing some of the receptacles beyond it. So let's pull that back in here. So there we go. Okay, so we need some above counter receptacles on either side of this range. Now, what's our distances? We need to check that. This is 3 feet. So we only need one receptacle. Let's use our above counter receptacle that we already used. Put that here. And again, it might try to stop at the thin line, which is the backsplash. Well, we're not mounting it in the backsplash. We're mounting it above the backsplash on the wall. So we want to go a little bit further so it snaps to the wall. There we go. Same with this area. Snap to the wall. So now we have those. And then we need a receptacle for the refrigerator. Some people mount that at 1'6". I like to show these up around 4 feet. I feel they're easier to get to when you pull the refrigerator out and get into it. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, this is having trouble finding the wall because looks like the refrigerator itself is clear smashed against the back wall. It would have been nice if the architect left it away. They didn't. So to get to the back wall, I'm going to have to find back wall over here and then just drag it over like that. Another thing about the NEC is it's going to require GFCI or GFI, ground fault protection, on many receptacles in the kitchen. So you'll need to follow that. Now you may want to indicate GFCIs here, or you may include those requirements in a list of notes or specifications. So in this case, I'm not going to be showing it for all of these. I'm going to let my separate written specifications remind the contractor to put GFCIs and arc fault receptacles, tamper-proof receptacles, all of those code things within some notes, not actually on the plan. Different people do it differently. Some people get very explicit about what type of receptacle this is. As you recall, we did have a GFCI receptacle available to us right here. So we could click that if we wanted to say GFCI. But you're kind of stuck with where this label ends up. I personally don't like them. If I'm going to say GFCI, I prefer to just add text that says GFCI, and I can put that where I want. Something like that. But in this case, we're going to leave it off. Now, we need to provide a receptacle in this all-electric house for this range. Now, if a range has not been picked out yet, which often it isn't while the home's being designed, we'll just put in a standard 50 amp outlet that's also 240, 2-pole like the dryer. So let's use the dryer symbol. It's already set up for 240. Create similar. And let's put that. Now, it again wants to attach to the back of that range. We want to attach to the wall. We can't get to it. So let's do it over here and then drag it in. There we go. There's our range connection. And again, it's already set up as a 240 volt 2-pole. We don't care about the load here because we're going to count for the load with a different kind of method. But we do want a label in here. So we can right click, create similar, type in range. And sometimes I like to say what size the outlet is here. So I'll do something like that, range, and then I get my leader, get that turned down and pull up the shoulder and do something like that. And then finally, I have kind of an island here. Now, instead of drawing a bunch more sections, I can repurpose these sections. Let's say, for example, I can just swap this view of this section, and now when I click it, I'm looking to the left at this island with this sink. Now, it looks like we have something underneath here. Again, as long as we have our pinned elements checked, we can hover over the architectural background, go over one of these lines, and hit Tab until it lights up. There it is. Now click it, dishwasher. So that's what it is. It's an under counter dishwasher. So I want to make sure that, and you can now, as I zoom in and out, it kind of is apparent. And there's the face of it. I want to get a receptacle down underneath here for this dishwasher. I don't want above the counter. I want a low one. So let's go ahead and do create similar. And looks like the dishwasher has a little gap behind it so I can actually find this wall. Otherwise, put it up here and move it. And maybe I want to move it over here to the side of the dishwasher. Again, electrician will rough it in where it makes best sense. I want to put a label on this that says that's a dishwasher. So I will go ahead and do my create similar. And maybe I'll just use something like DW for dishwasher. I don't think this wall extends above the island. I think it happens to be within the island. So let's take this section and draw right through the island. I'm going to turn it around and let's see. Yeah, see that? It only has a wall below the countertop. There's nothing here to mount anything to. So we will need receptacles on this island, but pretty much at the ends. Now there's code rules for that you'll want to check out. But in general, we pretty much need a receptacle at this end and then at this end that are mounted up high, close to the countertop, so that somebody can get a cord there and power countertop equipment. So let's go ahead and get a receptacle mounted there. And then we'll want to check the height of that. Now, what's the height of our counter? Well, we can add dimensions to this to see. So go to the dimension mark down at this level, and then let's pop it up to there, top of the counter. It's just a 3-foot counter. I think most counters end up being a little taller than that, but in this case, the architect put them down at 3 feet. So let's get the receptacle up around 2.6. So this one, 2.6, 2'6", and I want the same thing down here. Now this one is not letting me attach to the bottom of the wall, and some of this has to do with how the wall was drawn in the architect's plans. So this gets annoying with hosted families again, but let's hit tab. There it is. It's swapped down. So tab is your friend. If things don't work, hit tab until things line up where you want it. So tab right there. Now this one got put at 1'6", so we need to make sure we put that at 2.6. And again, check our section. The section is cut right through the middle of that, so we need to drag it down here so we can actually see that receptacle. And there it is. Now you may wonder, how are we going to indicate to the electrician, the installers, that these are at a different height? Well, a lot of times we'll use different symbols for that, like above counters can have some partially filled in things or have a different symbol. Again, because we're using out-of-the-box receptacles, we don't have that available to us right now, so we'll have to use a different method. One thing you can do is just type in 2'6" AFF, above finished floor. And so you'll just have to manually say that, and you can copy this text around. These here are 4 feet, so something like that, 4 feet AF. Some method of notating that. And I may want to do that down here as well. 3'6". So that's one method you can do that. You can also do it with notes. Say anything above a counter is a certain height. I can copy this note. Something like that. However you like to notate that. So it looks like our kitchen is all set up. Let's see what else we need to do in here. We have restrooms. Let's get to the master bathroom. And typically you will find receptacles above the sinks. So let's go ahead and throw those in here. Now, again, we need to figure out what height we want those. Let's move our section over to here and we'll flop it around. There we go. Let's take a look at this east interior wall. So here we have our sinks and the cabinets with looks like mirrors above them. So I like to get the receptacle just about there. So let's try one of these 4-foot receptacles. See how that's 4 feet. We will right click, create similar, and put it on this wall. Now again, to not intercept and interfere with the cabinetry, I'm going to hit the wall first and then pull it over to make sure. Again, that's how these hosted elements work. Let's check that height. That's the kitchen. So there. Now we could put this down at the 3/6 level, and that looks a little better. So we'll do the same to the other one. Let's create similar this one, get it down on this south wall, and move it over. And it's at 3/6. We're good. Now again, this would be a GFI, GFCI type receptacle. We're going to handle that with general notes. So that is that bathroom. Now we have yet another bathroom over here that we want to do the same thing. So we can actually just right click, create similar, and zoom into this. And we'll get it on the side wall, a clean place, and move it 3/6. So I'd also like to get a receptacle on the exterior of this house. So I'll put one here on the front porch area. Let's use one of these. And that would be a weatherproof and GFI type receptacle itself. And then also in the garage would be good to get some receptacles in here. Now, one thing we have to note is that this garage ends up being at a lower level. And let's just show you that with a section through the house. We'll draw a section here. Take a look. How far is that looking? Just past the wall. So let's see here. Here's our main house, and here's the garage on the right. Here's the track for the door. We can see that it steps down to this level here that we need to pull over. And it's actually at a level called grade. So our receptacles need to be in relation to grade. So how are we going to do that? Our floor plan view is based upon level 1. So we're going to have to change that. I'll show you how we can do that. And in the garage, I like to put them up at 4 feet above the floor. We do need to be above 18 inches for code reasons because we have gasoline, most likely. Even if you have electric vehicles, plan on having gasoline in here. And so we need to get those up above there. Let's do a 4-foot receptacle. So this guy is already at 4 feet. Let's take him, create similar, and I'll put a couple on this left wall because we don't know where the homeowner may put a workbench or something like that. So we'll get a couple receptacles here. Now I'll put one there. It's at 4 feet. However, it's 4 feet above level 1. We need it 4 feet above grade. So what we can do on this receptacle itself is we can change its relative level. We can change it to grade level. Now, like I said, you can't change the level of an entire view, entire floor plan, but you can change relative levels of individual families and instances. So there, now you can see it's 5/6 from grade. So it didn't move the receptacle up or down. It just changed its relative measurement. So we actually need to move now this receptacle down to 4 feet above its level called grade. And then let's continue copying these over by using create similar. Now, because this floor plan is set up for level 1, it's always going to refer them to level 1, even if I do create similar. So I have to do this exercise for each of these receptacles. Here, here, and here. Now, if I don't want to do each one individually, I can select, because I have pinned elements allowed, I'm accidentally selecting my linked model. So let's go ahead and turn that off. This is why you want to turn that off once in a while. Turn off these select pinned elements. Now when I click, I'm not selecting the element, and I can do my window that I'm trying to do. I'm going to window these 3, and I did pick up 3 electrical fixtures. Now I can change all of these at one time rather than individually. There's many different selection tools in Revit. One of them I did show you earlier was this whole filter idea right here, the filter. You can also right-click on an element and say, select all instances visible in the view. Now, they don't mean this window that I'm windowed in. They mean the entire view, so the entire first level floor plan. Or I can go all of them in the entire project that are this type. And then furthermore, you can even include legends if you have things in legends. So you can use these tools to help you select items. So I also want to get a receptacle outside. This ends up being, if we hover over it and click, it ends up being a condenser for an HVAC system for the air conditioning. So I'm going to go ahead and get a receptacle out here for that as well. There. And again, that one's going to be based off of grade level, 4 feet. So that should complete at least our receptacle layout. Next, we need to connect other equipment like the HVAC and plumbing. So that is why I linked in the mechanical model so that we have the locations for their equipment. We don't have electrical data available. And you may think, well, is there some way that I can actually hook up to this let's see what it is. This exhaust fan, exhauster. Is there any way I can hook up to the exhaust fan? Well, we cannot get to the electrical connector of a linked model. So no, we have to put something into our model that has the proper electrical connector and electrical characteristics to actually connect it to our electrical system, our panel. So you could copy monitor this actual fan if you want. Now, sometimes mechanical equipment like that does not have the proper electrical connectors in it. The family doesn't. So my preferred method is to actually just use my own electrical connector in my model and place it on or next to the mechanical device. So for example, what we have in our preloaded families down here is a junction box with a load, is what that means. And this is, again, an out-of-the-box Revit family that you can download from their cloud. And I've already preloaded those. So they have a 120 volt, a 208 volt, 2-pole, 208 3-phase, all these different kinds of connectors. We're going to go with the 120 volt single phase. We're going to assume that we have available the actual HVAC PDFs of their design with typically a schedule or even cut sheets of their equipment so that we know what voltage these are specified at and what horsepower or full load amps they are and what kind of overcurrent protection is allowed. So we have that information. We're going to say off screen and we're going to use it. So we're going to say this is a 120 volt. And what this is just a junction box symbol. It happens to have a 3-dimensional junction box also with a height from level. We don't know exactly where to connect this, but we're just going to put it anywhere. Again, this is diagrammatic, they call it. The electricians will, in the field, figure out exactly where this will go. But we're going to put a junction box right next to it, and I'm also going to move my room tag out of the way, which is nice that I can move that. And if you click on this, you can see up top, the key is it has a power connector, and we're going to be using those in the future to connect these to our load center, our residential load center or panel. And then this is set up so it has an instance parameter for the load. Now, again, we're going to do our load calculations in a different method rather than using the load here, but I like to make the load match, at least for future reference. So we're going to say they told us this is only 100 VA exhaust fan. Because this is an instance parameter, remember, instance means only for this one junction box because it's in this box. I could reuse this junction box all over the place for my exhaust fans, but I actually want my exhaust fan to have a name associated with it, and I'm going to show you how we can use a tag that's smart that reports its name. So let me show you how we do that. When it comes to tagging this, I could do just text like I did for the range and for the laundry equipment, or I can use the power of Revit to draw the name out of the junction box and report it, so that if I happen to change the name of this junction box, the tag will change with it. And that's a key to learn, is this smart tag. So let's go up to the annotate tags. We used room tags before, but we also have what's called a tag by category. And that we know what the categories are. Electrical fixtures, electrical equipment, lights, things like that are categories. So it'll tag by whatever category this is. And the default tag, because you can have different tags for the same category, the default tags are down here, loaded tags and symbols. You can see in here that here's all the categories that you can tag. Cable trays. The default tag for a cable tray, loaded tag, is called cable tray size tag. Down here under electrical fixtures, we have an electrical device panel tag. Well, that would indicate that if I put this tag on an electrical fixture, like a junction box or a receptacle, it will tell me what panel it's connected to. Maybe I want that. Maybe I want something else reported. Maybe I want the name of the equipment reported. So this is where the default is, but there can be other tags in here. As you can see, there's a circuit tag or a panel tag. And we'll get into how to load these and change these, but just to let you know that there's a lot of different tags for the same category. And so we'll just have to decide which one we want. And we can have multiple in the same project. Let's tag this and see what we get. Tag by category, hover over this, and we get a little question mark with a line. Now in this version of Revit 2025, up top is where it says whether you get a leader line or not. Previous versions may have had a box over on the left here. But if I unclick that, now I won't get a leader line. I'll just get the question mark. But let's go ahead and leave the leader line in there. Now, why are we getting a question mark? And we can move that around. We're getting a question mark because it's looking for a panel, but we don't have it assigned to a panel. I would like this tag to report the name of this device. So I make sure I have my tag selected, and then I want to change it to the electrical fixture tag standard. There. We're still getting a question mark. So it's trying to report some data out of this junction box, but what is it reporting? Well, from experience, I know that it's looking for the name of this box, and the name is reported in a type parameter down here called type mark. So if I was to put bath fan in type mark, we have to get the shoulder right. So that's what it's reporting. So if I was to change the name of this from something else, that tag would change. It works both ways. If I change the name of this bath fan to go bath fan 1, hit enter, I'm changing a type parameter. Every 4-inch square 120-1 type of this family will be a bath fan 1. So if we go down to edit type, there, it changed it to bath fan 1. Now, if I have another fan over here, let's do create similar over here at this toilet. Because I selected the name type tag, not panel tag last, that is my default now. It changed the default. So I can use tag by category again, and I get bath fan 1. Now, if I want this one to be bath fan 2, let's say I want them called two different things, and I don't need it boxed. Let's change it to bath fan 2. I'm changing the type. Well, what does that mean? It means my first one I put in now is bath fan 2. So that's the type parameter issue. If I want two separate pieces of equipment with two different type parameters, I have to create two different types. So I need to create a bath fan 1 type and a bath fan 2 type. So the way I do that is I go into the edit type and I want to duplicate this, copy it. Duplicate this, and it's trying to give me a name. I'm going to call this the name I want, bath fan 1. And I want it to say bath fan 1 down here. I have the name of the type, and then I also have the name tag of this type. Now this is bath fan 1, and this one is still bath fan 2, but I don't really want to change the name of this 4-inch square box, so I'm going to also duplicate it and call it bath fan 2. Hopefully you can understand that that's the difference between the types and instances. Now, it gave me an error about having the same type parameter. Well, it's the same type parameter as that 120 junction box that we put in, but that shouldn't be a problem. And so the best procedure then is to have a separate type for each piece of equipment that has some kind of different characteristics, different voltage, different name. Now, let's say that we find out that the bath fan has a little more load, bigger fan, more CFM, more VA. But first of all, we want to make sure that we create a new type for the laundry fan. So let's edit the type, duplicate it, and let's say laundry fan. And we want to put the same name in the type mark so that it gets tagged properly. Now we can find the tag, or we can just do right click, create similar, and let's put the tag there, laundry fan. Now this fan, we're going to say, like I said, has a different VA, so let's go ahead and put that up to 200 VA. So now we have our 3 exhaust fans. One thing I mentioned is that these junction boxes do have a height associated with them. So let's use our section and take a look at that. We want to keep track of the 3D aspect of our model as well. May not be so important for some projects, but it's a good practice to get used to it so that if the architect wants to bring your model into theirs and do some basic interference or clash detection, we don't have a junction box sitting on the floor. Now, we don't know exactly where it's going to be up here. This is just diagrammatic, but let's at least get it above the ceiling, right? So there. Now, I can actually just take this from this view and just move it up. And it still is in the same horizontally. I can nudge it over, but I'm not trying to get exact. I just want to get a relative idea of where that is. At least it's there. So on the other one also, let's see what height that ended up at. It ended up at about 8 feet. So let's just round that up to 8 feet. And I'll do the same for this fan. Get that box up at 8 feet. And like you noticed here too, it's a horizontal box. It may be a vertical box in some cases. Again, in our situation here, we're just getting close and we're dealing with out-of-the-box families. So we have to live with that limitation as well. Let's check the laundry. And it looks like it could go up to 8 feet. It's right on the ceiling, which is fine. Okay. Now, other equipment we have out here in the garage. So hover over that. That's the mechanical model. And we haven't pinned the mechanical model, by the way. It's probably a good idea to pin that. And then we have to make sure we can select pinned elements to get to it. Let's tab over this a couple times. And that's a furnace. And we're going to say in this project that we're going all electric furnace. So it will be, let's say it's something like a 20 kilowatt connection. We're going to use our junction box again. Now we don't need the one up at 8 feet, but we can lower it, create similar. And we'll say that its connection's back here. And let's get it down. Again, now we're in the garage with a different grade level, with a different floor level. So let's go relative to grade and let's put this box up at 4 feet. And we're actually going to edit it and call it something else. We're going to call this electric furnace. Let's say that we found out that this is a 240 volt furnace because it's such a high load. So let's change the voltage and characteristics of this type. That's another reason we need a separate type, because we have different type parameters. 2, and load classification is not going to matter for residential. So now we have a 240 volt. I mean, the actual load is an instance parameter for this out of the box family. So we're going to call it 20,000 VA. And then we have an electric water heater as well. So let's do create similar for the water heater. It's a different type. Duplicate electric water heater. It's also 240 volt, and it is going to be, now we need to make sure that we also put that type parameter down here under electrical furnace, which I did not. And let's get some tags. Electrical furnace, electric water heater. This guy is going to be 5 kW. In this garage, we found out that the homeowner is going to have an electric car charging point placed on the wall. So we need to get a connection for that. Now, it could be a special receptacle. A lot of times people will just plug into a 50 amp 240 volt outlet. So we will go that way. Well, where do we have that kind of outlet? Well, we have one for the dryer and we have one for the range. So let's take the range special receptacle, put it here. We had just called this a standard high voltage receptacle, and we just gave it some voltage here. We didn't need to give it the load again because it's residential. Now, we could do the same thing here where we can duplicate it and call this EV charging. I'm not calling it charger just because technically it's not a charger on the wall. The charger's in the vehicle, and the charging point is on the wall, but that's, that's getting picky. Electrical charging 240. And again, I'm not going to worry about its load in this case, but because I made it a separate type, I can tag it with its name. So that's another reason to make different types for these things. And let's see what height it's at. Let's move it to grade and 4 feet. Now, also one thing to note about this different floor level is we can see these devices because they are still within our view range. Remember the view range for this floor plan. We have the bottom at level 1. Just as an example, if I was to put a receptacle below level 1, so way down, let's say we want this down at 1 foot above grade itself. Apply. It disappears. I can't see that receptacle, even though it's there, because of the view range. Again, now view range is very important in Revit. It'll cause a lot of visibility issues if you don't really pay attention to it. So how could I allow this receptacle to show up in this plan? Well, I can lower my view range to below the floor a couple different ways. I can change the bottom of my view range to actually level below. Now I get an error because the view depth plane is set above the bottom. Now the view depth we haven't talked about much, but the view depth is down here below the bottom. For example, if you're going to show underground conduits or other kind of underground or underfloor, you can set this below the floor level. It will show it as a different line type, might be dashed or might be shaded. So we need to also set this level at the same or below. That allows our receptacle to show up because we changed the actual bottom of our view. Now, the only thing of changing the bottom of the view for the entire plan is that if I had anything else in the crawl space or things like that, it would show up now because I dropped my level down to grade. So if you don't want to change the entire view to a lower level, there's one little kind of an advanced feature I feel like I need to show you, because even in a residential simple basic project, this can easily come to play. So the proper way to do this is go back to our view range. 90% of this view needs to be at the associated level for the bottom. And we're going to handle this differently with what's called a plan region. Up to view. Under plan views, and this is where you would go if you're going to create a whole new plan. And we will end up doing that eventually for a site plan. But here, this is where you would make a floor plan. When we get to lighting, we're going to make ceiling plans. But this is called a plan region. A plan region creates a region, like a sub area, within a view. As you can see in this little picture cartoon below, they're drawing that purple box around a portion of the wall, and then you can set a different view range within that area to see things differently just for that area. So, for example, in their case, they had some high windows. You couldn't see them with the normal view range. Maybe the cut plane wasn't high enough, but I don't want the entire view to have a high cut plane. So you can encircle an area, small area, and change the plan region just for that. So it's a way to have a smaller area with a different view range. Let's do that. So view, plan views, plan region. We're going to make the garage, and I'm going to start right at the grid line here, and just make, and instead of using a line, I can select a rectangle tool. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger than the wall. I'm going to encircle this garage. And I want to go outside too in case I have things outside. There, I've made a plan region, that thing, and I'm still I'm in sketch mode. The purple lines and the check mark means I'm just sketching this, because I can continue to pull lines around and change the shape before I accept it. And then as part of this, I can set the view range of this region separately. So this is the one where I want to make the bottom actually at the level below. The cut plane is still based on our level, and I'm going to move it down to 3 feet above level 1 or 2.5. And the top, I'm fine with the roof, and the view depth, I have to go with level below. So I pretty much did what I was doing before, but I'm only doing it for this purple rectangle. And then you won't notice it until I say accept. Now you can see the receptacle, because this box now has a different view range. So that's how you can deal with that. And you can do it with just a section of wall to see a window. You can do it with one sunken living room. There's many uses for this. So that lets me see things differently. Now I notice I need to connect my condensing unit outside. I'm going to start with my furnace. Create similar. My furnace connection is back here, let's say. And what's its height? Let's get to grade level. 4 feet above grade level. That's good. Again, I don't worry about the load so much, but let's say it's only going to be a 10 kW load. And let's duplicate this and call this condensing unit, 240 volt, 2-pole. And again, I forgot my type parameter down here, the type mark, so that my tag works. And let's use my little guy up here, tag by category, condensing unit, and I can use the little move command to move that around. So there we have a completed power layout. The next step is to get all of this connected up to a panel. And by the way, we need to throw a panel or a load center into this project. So we will deal with adding that and circuiting next.